Bonjour à tous. Donc bienvenue dans cette track Data Transformation. Donc n'hésitez pas à rester toute la journée si vous voulez. Il y aura des talks sur ces sujets-là toute la journée. Et on est ravis de commencer avec Bastien Zimmermann qui travaille avec Mathieu qui est aussi dans la salle chez Craft AI. Et ils vont nous présenter un panorama sur les solutions open source d'explicabilité de nos modèles et de nos prédictions. Et donc, je te laisse la parole, Bastien. Je crois que ça fait 2 ans et demi que tu bosses full-time sur ces sujets-là. Donc, on a hâte de t'entendre et d'entendre ton expertise là-dessus. Donc, je ne sais pas si tu voulais la faire en anglais, d'ailleurs, la présentation en français.
C'est prévu pour être en anglais.
So, please put your hands together for Bastien.
Good morning, everyone. So, as François said, I'm here to talk to you about XAI, which stands for eXplainable AI, and the libraries that revolve around it. So, first of all, let me introduce you what XAI is. So, one definition that I like about XAI is any methods and models that make the behavior and predictions of machine learning systems understandable to humans. So you take something that's like a black box, and you try to add methods, to add anything to explain it to the human, to make it understandable. So the second question that you might ask now that you know what it is, why would you need XAI? So as you know, machine learning and system revolving around decision-making systems, automated decision-making systems, are becoming more and more popular. And with this popularity, people tend to use those just off the box, without knowing exactly what the model does, just relying on 1 or 2 metrics such as accuracy or anything else. So the first thing you would want for your machine learning system is trust. You can't deploy, let's say you're using something around facial recognition. You want to know a bit what it does. You want to know there's no bias in how the model works. You want to be able to trust the system. And for that, you need explanation. You need to know more about how it works. And XAI does provide that. The second point is a bit of safety. So here, these pictures displays an explanation. So let's say you want to classify dogs or animals, and the husky is classified as a wolf, and the explanation doesn't show anything about the dog, but the snow that's around it. So the explanation here highlights a bug. Let's say the husky wasn't in the training set, it's out of distribution. With classical accuracy metrics, you can't see that. So explanation can provide that. And in many other ways, you need to know, to be able to debug your system, with those explanations, to have a safe deployment, a safe usage of the technology. And finally, if you're still not convinced, in Europe here, the European Commission does, we have some laws. For example, the RGPD, which force you to provide explanation in some automated decision-making systems. You need to explain coherently to the one receiving the decision how the system worked. And further, the AI Act is under development to further outlaw, to further regulate the usage of machine learning systems. So all those points are good reason for why you should use eXplainable AI. So this presentation revolves around my personal experience. So I'm an engineer, I'm an R&D engineer at Craft AI. And the first thing I do is I do experiments. So for most of my work, I need to use tools, off-the-shelf tools, that work seamlessly to be able to experiment on my data, on my models, to understand a bit what I'm using. So this experiment phase, I need to use libraries, and if they don't work, it is not usable. So that's one of the reasons why we need good libraries. Another point is at Craft AI, we develop an MLOps system, an MLOps platform that the aim of the platform is to bring machine learning models to production seamlessly. And in that platform, we have an eXplainable module. So we explain the models. We bring explanation to the models inside the platform. So here is an example of, for instance, Shapley values. So this is a totally different environment. You need the code to be robust, to be production ready. So it's a bit of a different approach. And another aspect of my work is when I develop my own solutions, so my own XAI methods, for which when I write papers, I publish the code. So it's part of the open source landscape. So it's another aspect for which you need to consider other things. So those 3 points are what built my view on XAI and led me to develop those 4 axes of evaluation. So when you face an XAI library, there's several things you need to consider to know whether it's usable and whether it's good or not. So this can be the main points to take away from this presentation. If you want to use eXplainable AI, you need to consider mostly those 4 points. So the first one comes with any library. You need the code to work and to be maintained. Of course, so good metrics for that are any GitHub metrics or GitLab or any repo you use. And you need also the example and notebooks to work seamlessly. If many libraries don't have that, so this is the first and foremost point that you need. A second point is documentation. But take care, it's not documentation in the classical way. It's XAI documentation. So basically, you need to understand what your method is crafted for. If you don't know what the explanation seeks to explain or what it's made to explain, there's nothing worse than using something that you don't master and over-relying on it. Even not having explanation is better than that. So you need good things to have are sketch of inner workings, really a proper explanation of what the methods seeks to explain, and finally what you can extract from the results. So this documentation part is quite important. Third point is the specific features. So the more methods, the more algorithms you have to comply with XAI, the better to have diverse point of views. And XAI is also a field of research quite recent, so it's evolving. Some methods were good in the past and have been disproven. So the libraries need to follow that a bit closely in order not to provide tools that aren't relevant anymore or that even wrong. It can happen. And lastly, I want to put an emphasis on the medium. There's no one-size-fits-all explanation. So you need to interact, to play, to toy around with your explanations and your data and your model. You need to compare, to appropriate yourself the explanations, because the diversity of point of view is primordial to understand what you're doing in XAI. So the 4 points are basically maintenance, documentation, the features, and the medium. And based on those 4 points, we created these classifications. So the first 2 points are represented on the readiness for production axis, and the last points are on the XAI potency. So when I say readiness for production, take care, it's the same for the documentation point. It's considering explanations. So let's say you have scikit-learn that is not on the top because it's not focused toward XAI features. The documentation could provide more emphasis on what the method limits are, for instance. So this is the classification. And now I'm going to guide you through a tour around those libraries. So as any data science problem, we rely on data. So the data set I'm going to use during this presentation is penguins, Palmer penguins data set. So basically, depending on attributes of the penguin, the culmen length, the culmen proportions, and other things, you need to predict the species of the penguin. So there are 3 species in this case: chinstrap, gentoo, and Adelie. So this is just for illustration purposes. And the first library I'm going to talk about is on the top right corner here, is SHAP. So SHAP basically is a library that revolves around one specific tool, which is Shapley values. It comes from game theory, and it tries to share the reward among players. Here, for machine learning, we try to share which features are responsible for the output in one sense. So one example of a Shapley value is displayed here. The arrows represent the Shapley values. And one way to read that explanation is for a model that, for this penguin here, the model predicted the class being a gentoo. And why did it predict it as a gentoo? Well, the most important feature contributing to this class is the flipper length, being what it is. It's 21 centimeters. I don't remember the. Yeah, no, 2 centimeters, 15. No, 21 centimeters. So this is one Shapley value. So it's the tool, it's the explanation that SHAP leverages around all this library. And what's good about SHAP is that it extracts fully the potential of Shapley values. Shapley value is a quite, let's say, elegant notion that you can articulate in many ways to extract different information about your model. And what the SHAP library provides is many examples, many different examples on how to use those and how to properly extract information from those explanations. So one possibility is to change the model output class. So let's say you want to explain why the penguin isn't classified as an Adelie. You have an explanation for that. Or for the third class chinstrap penguin, you can have another explanation for that. You can have even dataset-wise explanation. So it's the same Shapley values, just displayed another way. The explanation is just the information that you can extract from that is just different, but the tool remains the same, and the library guides you really in a nice way through that. And there's a really rich documentation that makes it one of the best libraries. And as a side note, the Shapley values are implemented in many libraries. It might be the most popular XAI feature in itself. You might wonder, what's the best library based on my criteria? And it can be said that Alibi Explain is the best library that's currently out there. So for the 3 main reasons: that it has really qualitative documentation, a really good implementation, it works seamlessly, and the methods that it proposes, it disposes, that are at your disposal are really, there's many. So for instance, you can build counterfactual explanation, which is basically a what-if explanation. So why the penguin wasn't classified? What if the penguin was classified as another penguin? So the closest one would be an Adelie penguin that has just different culmen proportions. Another explanation could be an anchor. So what can we see that? I mean, the general. What could we describe as being a general area around this penguin that could be classified in the similar way as an anchor? And here it's basically a fat penguin. Any penguin that follow those rules will be classified similarly, and that represents 22% of the data set. And as you can see, there are many methods that provide different explanations So for building your own opinion on your data and understanding your models is quite important. I'm going to develop a bit what's a qualitative documentation. So here are some extracts of the alibi documentation. So as you see on the right panel, the API reference is just one minor point. You need to understand how the API works, but it's not central. And for every explanation method, you have how the method works in depth with many points that are tailored for the explanation method. So as you can see, you can have concepts, use case insights. So really, they went into many details to make sure that you are able to properly use the explanations. So the 3 points are what make Alibi a good documentation. And lastly, I put an emphasis on the interactivity of the medium. And eXplainable dashboard is one example of that. So basically, it provides many explanations in a quick and easy format. You can navigate it seamlessly, and there's small text describing what the explanation is made for. So in order to play, to interact with your explanation, it's quite a convenient library. So eXplainable dashboard, not as qualitative as the previous one, but a good example of interactivity. So if there's one thing to take home after this presentation, is how to evaluate the libraries, the XAI methods. So as I said, maintenance, documentation, features, and medium. Those 4 points are also the 4 most negative things about that needs to be developed around those libraries. There's many performances issues, many libraries that are abandoned, the documentation that's not focused toward XAI, so people give you tools, but don't tell you what they're made for. So yeah, use that. It'll be a beautiful explanation, beautiful pictures, but that's worse than not having any explanations. And really putting an emphasis on the medium could be only for the best. So I hope that you're now convinced that XAI is really mandatory for the deployment of machine learning models or any machine learning based systems, and that now you have some keys when you'll be able to, when you'll want to craft your own explanation for your own problems and data sets. So thank you for listening to me, and if you have any questions, I'll be pleased to answer those.
So you talked about Alibi, and one of the axes was maintenance. So can you talk about the maintenance of this project? Who is maintaining it? Who is developing it? And is it constantly maintained?
Based on the GitHub metrics, and yeah, it's quite well maintained. The company behind it is Seldon. And they use the library as some kind of window on their work to say, look, we provide explanation, we are eXplainable, and they do communicate a lot around this library as an entry for their. Then they have. I don't know exactly what they provide as a service, but they use the eXplainable library, Alibi Explain, as an entry point to their services, and that's why they put a lot of money on maintaining the library, as well. Yeah, it's also to tell people that, hey, look, we are participating in the research on this field on XAI, and we are competent in producing those solutions.
Thank you. Do we have one question? One more?
Thank you for the presentation. Just one question. Do you know XAI libraries that are focused on computer vision?
Yeah, so there are several ones that are focused on computer vision. So, you can have the French library, explique, which there's many feature attribution, so pixel-wise attribution that are offered. Or also there's the Capture library, which is from PyTorch. So those two libraries are a good XAI library when it comes to computer vision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think it's time to stop. So thank you very much, Bastien. I think tonight I will go and check Alibi because I don't know it already. Thank you very much.
Thank you.